Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So tonight, oh boy, one second. I was testing my audio and I left my monitor turned on. Yeesh, that was annoying. Okay, so tonight I'm gonna dive into some Velopack stuff. It's what I've been working on and trying to come back to after my busy week of moving related stuff. So currently things are a little slower, but I am definitely moving. We have a mound of paperwork and home inspections and similar things to get through, but sometime in the near future I will be relocating, and depending on when that date is, I apologize, I may end up having to cancel a stream or two while I get everything sorted out in terms of relocating where the new office is going to be. Again, you'll be greeted with the same green screen, so huzzah, it'll look the same to you, but for me it'll be very different. And so getting internet set up in the new place and all of that stuff. So we'll see what day that is. I might have take a day off due to packing, unloading related stuff as well. So there's a chance some streams will be canceled, and I apologize in advance, but I don't know when that is yet. Follow the that one. Follow either the Discords or the Twitter feeds to. That's usually where I'll post the streaming updates. I'm hopefully I didn't mess up your coffee, Izzy, but I do have my Mountain Dew, so I'm good. At least I think I am. So I apologize. The stream started a little late because I sat down and Windows wanted to install some updates, and I went, yeah, sure, that's fine. That's fine. That was a bad idea. It was a bad idea. I should not have allowed Windows to install updates. It took significantly longer than expected. Had like 3 reboots in the middle of it. I was like, yeah, that was a bad idea. So note to self, don't install updates moments before you think you're going to start a stream. That sounds bad. Okay, let's talk Velopack stuff. So there was a discussion that Kaylin and I had as far as how we want to manage our releases. And we realized after going back and forth that the way we had structured some stuff was a little off and didn't make a lot of sense. And so we're like, crap, do we redo it? And then do we redo it now or redo it later? And we kind of went around and we came to the decision that we should just do it now. Like, yes, it's going to delay us a little bit, but at the end, we think it'll be better. So what? Oh, hang on. I rebooted and Docker is not running. So yay, .NET Aspire. But if you don't have Docker running, it no worky. So always have your Docker host running when using .NET Aspire because it is needed. So one moment. My Docker host is starting. And then hopefully it's thinking. It is thinking. It launches. Yeah, updates are a pain, especially in an offline environment. Yes, I can agree with that. I think they're a pain in general. Like, they're a necessary evil. A necessary evil, I think, is the way. And of course, my stuff is all crashing, and that is wonderful. Failed to bind to address. Address is already in use. What? Okay, so my upload processor failed to bind to an address. And I'm not sure why it was even trying to bind to an address. Oh well, whatever. That's not what I wanted to show off anyway, so we're going to ignore that for a moment. Okay, so for the people who haven't seen this, this is .NET Aspire. It comes with this pretty dashboard. You can see all your stuff. I've got lots of stuff. Here's what we're looking at. We're going to look at the API page. So there's a bunch of stuff on the Velopack API and sort of the structure that this goes down. You've got users, which, you know, you've got users. I wonder why these aren't alphabetized. I thought they were alphabetized. I'll have to look at how to make those things sorted. Anyway, you've got users. Users belong to a team, right? So a team has 1 to many users. And then underneath teams, you have projects, right? And you can think of a project like what, like your solution, your Visual Studio solution or similar, right? And then underneath projects, you have channels. So a channel in terms of Velopack or release channel is like your alpha beta release things, right? You also might have separate channels if you are targeting multiple platforms. Like you might have Windows beta, Windows prod, Mac beta, Mac prod, etc. So release channels. And then before, underneath that, channels contained one or more releases. And I'm now scrolling, not knowing which direction to go. Release channels, teams, releases. Yeah, so underneath channels used to be releases. And we realized that was kind of problematic because most people think about releases in terms of a version number, especially if you're building a multi-platform targeted application. Like you're going to have your v1.0, and yeah, you might have a Windows, a Mac, etc. But functionally, most people treat those things as a group of things that they want to do. More importantly, in terms of Velopack, for a given release, even if all you do is say target Windows, like you're going to end up with at minimum 2 files, sometimes 3. Right? You're going to have the NuGet package, which contains the data of your application. You're going to have a setup exe, which is used to install your application. And the setup actually internally contains the NuGet package as well. But then you might have 0 or more Delta packages to update to that version from a prior version. So there's a bunch of that kind of stuff around there. And we decided, you know what we were lacking when releases were directly under channels was the concept of a grouping. So we made this idea of a release group, with the idea being that when you create a release group, the important things are your package ID, your version, and the channel that you want it to go inside of. Now, on the Velopack APIs, and I apologize, that's a tiny font. The channel identifier could either be the name, assuming the name is unique, because most of the time people have unique names, or the GUID for it, because all of our objects have GUID IDs. Right, so you can kind of use either way. Most people and the APIs all use past the GUIDs, but for people who are just manually typing them, you can type the name, assuming it's unique, and you'll get away with it. So that means then that when you're uploading, that changed the process a little bit. And this may still need a little bit of work, because before you would upload a release and you'd have to specify all this extra information. Now, when you upload, all you specify is the release group, because at the end of the day, the release group contains the rest of the information. It knows the channel that it's going to. It knows the package ID. It knows that you were able to create something that goes along with it. So there's a bit of that going on here of, if you have a release group, it's going to actually contain all of this stuff. And then the release group is also probably going to need some sort of like enabled or complete type flag, because until you actually upload at least that NuGet package one, it can't really be considered complete. And because we may be uploading in parallel and sending multiple files all at the same time, there's not really a guarantee of order here. So we want to get that built out. Now, the API is already out with most of, well, what you see here is deployed, which unfortunately broke our website a little bit. Oops. But that's why we did it now. Now's the time to break stuff before we actually launch for real. So if anybody was using this, I'm sorry, I broke you. But there is this upload process here. This is what we now want to fix with our VPK tool. So if we go here, and for anybody who is interested, they actually just do. Wow, why is my computer running? Feels like it's running uber slow. I do not know why it is feeling so sluggish. Yeah. Remind me later. Go away. You annoying me, GitHub. So for anybody who wants to follow on, this repo here is public. So the backend API is not a public repo. So sorry. But this one here is the SDK. And the important thing to know about Velopack on the SDK is if you just want to use the tooling and you want to host your installers yourself or on one of the well-known providers that we have, great. The SDK and the tooling for that is all free. knock yourself out, have fun. If things are working for you, we love hearing success stories, so please post those in the Discord because we would love to see that kind of information. We obviously see people's challenges and whatnot. Those people are usually good about sharing them, but we also like to know what's actually working, especially if somebody has like an Electron app. We have not been able to do a lot of like practical real world testing on the Electron side, so if anybody does, please let us know, especially if you have problems, because like we try to manufacture things, but it's kind of hard to anticipate every possible thing somebody's going to do in their app. Or, you know, is our little sample set up to match a real app? Maybe it matches yours. Maybe yours is doing something different. So yeah, let us know success stories. We'd love to hear some of those things. Okay, so there's that. But the important thing here is there is a tool inside of this repository called VPK. And this VPK, if I go here, let's see, this one. Right, because I started work in progress. View changes. No, I want to go here. Why will you not let me see my files? Kraken? Where did my files go? Oh, I'm an idiot. They're just... What? Hang on. This warrants a quick screen recording. Record path. 3. Stop. Okay. So we're just gonna take that little thing and set that to the side. That'll be a bug report here in a little bit. I don't know why that's doing that. Dear Kraken, that is wrong. You should show me files in tree view as well as path view. Okay, let's see here. VPK tooling. Down here. And let's see. There is the published task. Yeah, I guess we can jump there. I was hoping to show it from the other side as well. But I guess it actually doesn't come through without it. Yeah, let's just jump here, and we'll jump to here. Okay, so this is the thing that needs updating. This is the client that is used inside of the SDK to talk to our service. It is not overly complicated. There's some auth stuff here that is using MSAL, so it's the Microsoft Authentication Library for being able to authenticate against our service, and then it will cache the tokens locally. This is the same type of thing if you're using like the Azure CLI. It should look somewhat familiar. But like underneath these things here, you'll see there's like a login command, there's a log out command, all of those kind of usual happy things. But there's also this publish command, right? Where it's aiming to be able to push things up. Oh, let's see here. So been learning C++. With SFML and doing some simple simulations. C++ versus C#. What's the difference really? Pros and cons of each. Good question. Okay, so the big thing that people will talk about is probably the thing that matters the least to you is memory management. So C# is a garbage collected language, which means you don't have to think about allocating memory and deallocating memory. It doesn't mean the problem goes away. It just means it's often hidden from you and you don't think about it quite as much. Because you still have memory problems in C#. You have to keep track of your references, but it's kind of like sawing off branches of a tree. Is once you disconnect an object reference from the root, from the main trunk, the garbage collector cleans it up and takes it away. Whereas in C++, you do a lot of those allocations yourself. Malloc, dealloc, etc. A lot of it comes down to a bit of syntax. Some people will argue C++ is cleaner. I think that's kind of personal preference in a lot of cases. The things like generics in C# I find to be a lot a cleaner of an implementation. But if somebody is just starting off and learning, these are kind of things that don't usually matter a lot for somebody just learning. When I was in university, they made me take Python, Java. Let's see, Python, Java. I had a .NET course, but it wasn't in C#. It was in Visual Basic. And they made us do C and C++ just to kind of give us an appreciation for different languages that were out there and the pros and cons of each. I think at the end of the day, what I usually tell people is find something that you want to build and then build it with a language or tool. Yeah, Java, yuck. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of Java recently. It's not my favorite, we'll put it that way. But I mean, that was one of the nice parts about being exposed to it is I now have some experience with it, and I now have enough experience to go, yeah, I prefer C# syntax. I prefer its tooling. It's much nicer. But with that said, like some people really like C++ because it's what we'll say closer to the metal. You can squeeze more performance out of it, and that's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek because a lot of the benefits or the reasons that people don't like C# for performance have kind of fallen away. Like you have to be careful if you look at people's benchmark comparisons from like old C# to new C#. New C# is a lot better. Yeah, things like AOT, ahead of time compilation. There's a lot of performance that's been done because Microsoft wants to make C# the say their prime language of what everything gets built in. Like you look at anything Microsoft's doing, there is a C# at least SDK for it because that is kind of one of their main languages. Like all the new AI stuff, yeah, most of the researchers like their Python and similar, but yeah, there is a C# SDK and it is actively being worked on because they don't want C# to be second place in a lot of cases. So if there's performance benchmarks, they want to make C# work well. So I think what I would say is I think memory management is the biggest difference between the two languages. There's a lot of syntactic differences between them. But even though some people will point out those syntactic differences as difference in languages, I think you have the same problems in each. Right? Like in C++, you think a lot more about pointers and dereferencing and that kind of thing. And in C#, a lot of it's hidden away from you. Like C#, we're lazy. We do dot. But C# like if you do want to do pointer stuff, we can drop into unsafe code in C# and do a lot of stuff that's real similar. It's not identical, but it kind of gets you down to that level of thing. C++ has no reflection. Yeah, I will say C# also has, I think, a little bit bigger, I don't want to say a bigger set of like libraries and community around it, but in some ways it kind of feels that way. I think it depends on what space you're working in. Let's see. Aren't all the Office desktop apps written in C++ these days, Excel, etc.? Also, for a simpleton like me, making kind of simple apps, the garbage collection stuff, really relevant or even notice a difference? So I'll take those kind of in reverse order. The garbage collection stuff, you will note as being, at least if you're working in C#, it's something you don't have to think about very much. Whereas if you're working in C++, you're going to have to think about allocating and deallocating your memory. C#, we usually don't think about it that much. We go, meh. It's kind of like the person who comes behind and picks up the toys after you're done playing with them and puts them away. The garbage collector just kind of makes things go nicer for you, so you don't have to think about it as much. And especially for simple apps, sometimes memory management, like frankly, some people just don't bother to deallocate any memory. They just allocate all the stuff, they do their things, and they're all happy. And you're off to the races. As far as Office desktop apps built in C++, I think that varies a little bit. There are a lot of good desktop frameworks out there that are not in C++. So some popular options, like I do a lot of C# and WPF, but like for C# related desktop platforms, there's Windows Forms or WinForms. There's WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation. There's third-party ones like Avalonia and Uno. There's technically .NET MAUI, though the more I've used it, the more I would say if you want MAUI, what you really want is Avalonia or Uno instead. And then for people who are coming from like a web background, there's a lot of different kind of webby type frameworks to make doing desktop apps for web developers easier. So something like React Native, Flutter, Electron. There's a handful of those where it's kind of taking web-based technologies and bringing it down to the desktop space so that those developers can kind of leverage existing skill sets that they have to be able to build things out. So I wouldn't necessarily say everything is built in C++. For example, Visual Studio that I'm looking at here has parts written in C# and WPF, and it has parts written in C++. But Visual Studio is a massive application, and I wouldn't hold it up as a normal thing. I think a lot of the Office apps, if I remember right, are written leveraging, I think at one point in time they were React Native. I don't remember if that's still the case or not. Yeah. Let's actually look. I don't remember. Let's go take a little peek here and see if we can, because sometimes you can kind of reverse engineer out what something was built with just by looking at what it's the relevant libraries that ship alongside of it. And I think with a lot of the Office stuff, Office may be a very interesting one because you are, I'm looking for some of the telltale ones that you expect. Yeah, so these ones here would strongly imply like a C++, or at least something that can interop with it. And that's where it gets hard because C# and C++ libraries can talk to each other, like you can interop between them. It's very possible to build an app using both. Now, I wouldn't recommend it. Most of the time when people are interoping like that, it's because they've got an existing code base and they don't want to rewrite it. And it's easier to just interop between the two assemblies and go back and forth. And I think like the MSVC VCR 110, 102, these ones are kind of telltale C++ assemblies. So probably gonna say there, but I also know like the Office apps are highly extendable and you can build extensions for them with .NET as well. So there's probably, I would be surprised if there wasn't bits of both. I think is probably what I would suspect. And honestly, if you're looking for new stuff, the platform that Microsoft is putting a bunch of effort into for, yeah. Oh, and don't worry about derailing me. I rabbit, like, if you, anybody who's been around my stream for a while knows I'm very happy to rabbit trail for questions. So WinUI 3 is the platform that Microsoft is pushing for, we'll call it new desktop applications. But you'll note within WinUI 3, they have both like C++ and C# as options. So it's not that it's necessarily one or the other. It's pick your favorite. All right. What are we building up in here? Yeah. So we were going to work a little bit on the Velopack SDK. But yeah, so if you're looking to build a new desktop app, the Windows App SDK or WinUI 3 is probably where you should look. There's some really good getting started stuff for you in terms of kicking projects off. It is potentially what I think as the next good desktop platform. The problem is it's new and it's just now getting to the point where I think it's on par with the stability of some of the older ones. Like WPF came out in 2005. We're in 2024. Like, it's been around almost 2 decades. And so the nice part is you can find docs on it from 10 years ago that are still relevant and accurate. And it's been around so long because it's darn near bulletproof. And so it's like, if you want something stable and you don't care about some of like the new performance stuff or like some of the new Windows interactions, WPF is easy to get started with. And you can take WPF and bring it forward. Like, you can reference the Windows App SDK inside of WPF to gain access to like the new inking APIs and all the new Windows stuff if you want. It's just a little bit more of a headache than starting with WinUI 3, where you kind of get that stuff in the box ready to go. So pick your favorite. Let's see. WinUI 3 MDIX. Yes. So porting MDIX to another platform is going to be a major undertaking, and so I have been hesitant to do so. Thankfully, somebody did it for me for Avalonia, which props to them. The hard part, though, is because it's a fork, I know they're going to struggle to keep it up and in sync, so that at some point I may try to pull back some of what they did and actually produce multiple NuGets. But WinUI 3, I think, has the potential of being the next platform it gets ported to. But again, it's a major undertaking to port one over to the other. Like, there is not they're both in XAML, and that's kind of where the similarity ends, because unfortunately where the names collide, the APIs don't, and so things get weird real fast. Like, you have to kind of like attack the problems differently. And so, yeah, the APIs will end up being a little bit different across all of them. Okay, and then one more rabbit trail. Can Git Kraken do squash merge? Great question. Great question. So, let's see. Do I have anything here I care about? No and no. So I'm just going to whack this. Okay. So, like, for example, if I wanted to squash this onto here. So the squash merge operation, like, you can imagine if I were to open up a PR from this branch onto develop, right? And I'm sorry, that's tiny again. Be big, right? So I've got this flow release groups branch, and I've got develop, right? If I were to go here and, you know, pop the PR open, GitHub gives me the option of squash merge. So the hard part of, can it squash merge? Kind of. You can perform the operation that GitHub is going to do for you. The thing is, it's actually multiple operations. So if you were to rebase onto the branch, and then in my case, you know, you'd highlight all of the commits on your branch, and then you'd right click and you would go squash. That's the operation. So squash merge is basically that. And you could do those in the reverse order as well. Like, you can squash everything in your branch into a single commit, move your commit on top of your target branch, and then just fast forward your branch up, is kind of roughly what it would end up looking like. We put that back. See, how well is the undo going to work for me? Not well enough. Reset. Jump me back. So yeah, so can it do a squash merge? Yes, but there's not a button to do it in one quick step. I think you have to do the squash and the merge as well. And the only thing I hate about the word squash merge is because merge is actually a thing in Git, and squash merge is like not using a merge commit. Yeah. Time to rewrite project procedures at work. Yeah, and honestly, I think that's one of the things that I've been slowly pushing for my teams to do as well, is because we usually try to have team working agreements that, like, that way everybody on the team kind of comes to a shared understanding of, hey, here's how we're going to do things, right? And then it's just written down. It gives everybody a chance to kind of voice their concerns or questions that they have. It's great. But kind of how we do branching and project stuff, like, that's a big one for me. Like, if I have a say in it, it's like, yeah, we don't use merge commits. We rebase, we squash. Like, I am firmly in that camp. Speaking of which, we're just going to put myself on top of develop so that I have the latest. I don't think there's much here aside from the CVE is the only thing I'm really wanting to pick up. Yeah, on top of the other 50 billion things I need to get done in the next week. Yeah, I hear you. Slap moving on top of that. That's my life. Okay. Okay, so here is where we are going. Here's where we are going. So we have this Velopack Flow Service client. This is the client application that talks to, as soon as I find my page, that talks to this API, right? Obviously, this is not a client that has all of these APIs, and it is not a client that is auto-generated from the Swagger. Like, that is not a thing we are doing. Because this client here is only really expected to be consumed inside of the Velopack SDK. It's not really something that is expected to be consumed outside of it. Though it is public, someone theoretically could do that. If somebody wanted to use the API themselves, I would just suggest that they gen a client and go that route. But our SDK needs it so that when you run like VPK publish, it can push your stuff up. That would be a good thing. So the key thing here is right now, this method here, because we can kind of see there's these, oh, I don't have my, see, this is the problem when I reboot. I don't have all my tools running. All right, so we can see here, we've got these guys here, which indicates these are the members that are covered by the interface. This method here is the old one. All right, so we'll just kind of walk through what it does. This is what gets invoked when you run VPK publish. It makes sure that you've authenticated with VPK login first, because if you can't log in, what are we doing here, right? You're not going anywhere. It then pulls out the relevant channel information. It looks up the latest release assets. Because you feed it a release directory, it's going to rip through everything in that directory looking for those NuGet packages, the setup EXEs. It's going to sort them by channel and version, and then it's going to give you back the latest ones that are there. Great. That's what we want. Right? We then go through and we verify that that we have any assets, because these are going to be our NuGet packages. We go hunting for the installers, which is the setup exe or the app package on Mac. We then come down here and go, okay, we've managed to find some assets that need to be uploaded. We then rip through the files, and then we upload the release assets, which again, this is going to be like the NuGet packages, and then we upload the installers, right? Great, fine. The problem is this doesn't work in the new system, because the new system requires you to first create a release group, and then from that release group, upload assets into the group, right? So simple change. Simple change. I say that, and then I'm going to take an hour to get it done. The nice part is I have tests that show all of this. I like my tests. I love tests. Tests are my happy place. Okay, so we collapse these guys up. Right, so create release group, returns created with new release group. So this is basically what we want to set up. So in this case, the test shows that if we post to this endpoint with this request object, we can create a release group for this package ID at this version at this channel. Simple enough. That is effectively what we want to do. And then the rest of this assertion is just validating that the returned payload has the right data, and that the release group was actually created in the database, and that it has the 201 redirected location address for it. Right, so just validating all parts of it to make sure that it worked. Huzzah, right? Test passes, that gives us confidence. We come back over here. I have started building out a create release group method. And the hard part with this Velopack VPK SDK is, you'll note up here, I'm a little limited in my target SDKs. Like, I've got Net Framework 4.7.2 and Net 6. And the reason is because when you're building a library, you kind of want to give people some freedom to be on older frameworks. You can't always dictate that people roll forward. So we try to have as many reasonable supported frameworks as possible. But that means that inside of here, we're kind of limited on some of our APIs. Like you'll note this post is JSON async. The astute observer will note that API does not exist in Net Framework 4.7.2. Right? So we've done this kind of little dirty thing here where we've written our own little extension methods that post as JSON async for us. That way we don't have to do it and we can use the newer APIs. And so when we are on Net Framework, our extension method resolves. And when we are on Net 6 and we look at this guy, we secretly jump into we jump into system.net.http.json. So we get the real one when when our SDK supports it, or we'll fall back and we'll roll our own extension method when it does, which is kind of a nice, clever trick if you're trying to do multi-targeting. Right? When people talk about doing shim libraries, yeah, polyfill, I'm sure there's a library for those. I don't doubt it. The only thing that gets weird about that is then our package has to take a dependency on somebody else. And then, so for application level development, absolutely polyfill to your heart's content. That is exactly what it's for. For library development, you want to be a little more cautious about what dependencies you take, because every dependency you take means every consumer of yours also has to take that dependency. So it gets a little awkward at times, right? Of being able to pull those things out. And so down here, there is a read from JSON async, which is what we would like to do. Obviously, it doesn't work. We're going to have to implement that sucker. But the nice part is we can look at this to know what we're expected to get back. Right? So before, we're pulling back one of these release group objects. And in our case, the model looks like this. It has a lot of stuff on it. I'm going to copy this, but for the SDK, I don't think we care about most of it. Like, I may have already created this object too. Yeah. So we've got this guy here, but for the SDK, we don't care about much. At the end of the day, we really are only looking to get the ID back, because that's what the subsequent commands are going to need to upload files into it. And then probably a version. Remove big fat useless dependencies. Oh boy, what is this? Oh, I love that. I love that it did those as hyperlinks. That's awesome. I'm gonna clean up my browser profile pages. I just had a little bit of a change in my employer, because I work for effectively a consulting company, and the client I was working for, my contract there ended, which was a bittersweet farewell. Like, I really liked that team, and it was great working with them. They sent me off with a copious amount of Mountain Dew and Butterfinger candies, and they made me miss them, it was a bit sad. I was like, this is sad. Now I'm going to, like, you guys were my favorite team, and now I'm having to go to not my favorite team. So it was sad. But that's also, yeah, compensation package, Mountain Dew. Exactly. I wasn't gonna say no. It was great for me. Let's see. So we want release group, Don Draper's contract. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, so down here, I think at the end of the day, I think we can actually just straight return the release group here, can't we? Because we don't actually care. This thing is set to return. I guess the question is, because we're going to need to call this method. Why does this thing not have async on the end? That was dumb. We're gonna need to call this method first before we do any of this extra stuff, right? So it's gonna be something like this: release group gets await, right? And then it's going to be something in the order of, because this thing was doing this maneuver. Surely that's just the final payment of the lease. Always 3 times the normal charge. Yeah, well, they gave me this nice little certificate. Like, the running joke while I was there was, it's always the contractor's fault. No matter what goes wrong, it's the contractor's fault. And that was kind of our running joke. And so they gave me this nice paper certificate officially releasing me of all of my blame duties, accepting of blame duties. It was all in good fun. It was great. But I got a good laugh out of that. I was like, this is awesome. Absolutely awesome. I will take it. Okay, so this is going to look something akin to this. I'm really not a fan of how I declared this upload options here, because this is packing a lot more stuff. Like, what did I actually need from the options? I need the channel identifier, and I need the base URL. Let's pass those individually. Because I think we can do, and I think we actually just do this, right? So we'll just, I think that'll be cleaner. We'll do channel. And then we'll do, because get endpoint wants the Velopack base URL. Let's do an overload of this, because I have a feeling we're going to obsolete this. Like, this was done because this was the base. Yeah. I kind of feel like this should actually just be string Velopack base URL, right? And then this can go here, and then what we'll do is we will actually just replace this one. Thank you, Copilot. That was very convenient. You're making me look good tonight. Like, Copilot has been on point for me this week. Like, it has absolutely been rocking it. I don't know if I talked nice enough to it or what the deal was, but it has been absolutely on point. Let's see. So this is unhappy. Yeah, so the key thing here, right? Oh, dang it. Why does it do that? So if I go here, right? So available, not available. So part of the red squiggly is on Net Framework. It goes, I don't know what this read from JSON thing is. Knock it off. But Net 6 is like, I got you. So yeah, we'll polyfill that sucker in. And then we're gonna go with string. I think it allows nullable, doesn't it? Yeah, because we null check it in there. Let's see. Velopack base URL. We'll take that. And then we don't need the options at all, and that'll clean that up. Let's see. Supercharge VPK. I programmed in C# the last 2 years and got a new gig starting August. Go syntax is weird coming from C#. Now I program this month in Go and seeing C# again. My brain is like, wow, this is so weird. Yeah, I will say that. Like, I had a gig a while back where I was doing Go, Scala, and C#, and it's weird. Like, there's been a handful of projects I've worked in that require you to kind of bounce between multiple languages, and you can get used to it. Like, enough people do like full stack development where they're doing like the TypeScript on the front end and C# on the back end, so it's like, yeah, those are close-ish. Like, you can muddle your way through, but yeah, there's certain languages where you start getting the mix, and it's like your brain starts writing code in different languages. I've got a colleague who loves his Rust, and like, there's been a number of times we were pairing. I'm like, turn your Rust brain off. This is C#. Stop coding like this is Rust. Because stuff like that happens. Like, that is normal. We need to actually populate these as well. So we're going to need to get that information to flow down as well. Okay, but this at least gets me here, so I can do options, channel, options, let's see, Velopack base URL. So that gets me kind of to there. Channel shows nullable. Where was channel? Was channel being set in one of these? Oh, interesting. So we were setting channel. Channel's going to have to be a requirement. Why would we not make... Oh, we have channel right here. That's how we get away with it. Got it. If you don't set channel, it guesses based upon your operating system. Don't use var in C++ or auto in C#. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yes. I think I've seen this one. Yes. Yes. I love that guy. He posted a video the other day about like project managers, and I promptly sent it to a good number of my team with was like, this is a little too close to home. Like, this is like, it is definitely a joke, but there is a lot of truth in his videos. There is a lot of truth. Like scary amounts of, yeah, that's true. And you just kind of have to shake your head at it a little bit. Why am I doing options when I have service URL directly available to me? Okay, so that gets me to there, that gets me to there, that gets me to there. Okay, so we need to get version and package ID. Where were we getting those things through before? So version is set here. Package ID is set here. So I've got them both. And I think what we want to do is we actually want to validate that they're both not null. If package ID is null, just log and bail. Logger, log error. Yeah, that'll work. Thanks. Okay, Copilot, what's the next one I want to write? Come on, anticipate. Can't you tell? Version's right next to it. Come on, listen to my microphone. Okay, here's your hint, Copilot. Dang it! It figured it out. Suck. Okay, I'm sorry, Copilot. I'll stop taunting you. You were right. You are wise. I was wrong. All hail Robot Overlord. Freaking show off. Freaking show off. I was telling some colleagues that like Copilot is like the intern that has memorized all of the documentation. No idea how to build software, but they've memorized all the docs. So they're like, I got you. I can do this. Okay, so we're going to need version and package ID, but version here may lose you for a bit. Not sure my new car can handle Twitch via CarPlay. Sounds good, Izzy. And congrats on the new car. Let's see here. So we have, I'm trying to think of what the correct order of these parameters should be. I think package ID, version, and then channel. So we'll go here and we'll go string package ID, semantic version, channel. We'll do something like that. Okay. So package ID. Let's see, at least it's an EV, so phone won't go dead for about a month. That is true. That is very true. Big battery. Let's see, version. Oh, I don't remember what the difference is between these. To normalized string. What is the difference? That is not even remotely close to useful. Okay, what I heard is those docs not helpful. let's see here. Yeah, to normalize string is the one that we've used elsewhere. So that is very likely what I'm going for. Okay, so that gets me there, that gets me there. Okay, so the read from JSON is now the next challenge to address. Let's go back to net framework mode. And then we're going to jump to here. And then, and I realize this is HTTP content, but that's fine. Oh, you're so close. Let's try it. Implement read from JSON async. Let's see if we can do it just from that. I mean, that's pretty darn good. I think it did it. Dang nab, you frickin' Copilot. There's not one that takes, yeah, I don't think there's a cancellation token here. But this will take a cancellation token. Read as string async. Wait, read as string async doesn't take a cancellation token? Okay. That's exciting. But I think we have to leave the cancellation token because if we don't... Oh, actually, no, it doesn't. Does the net 6 one take a cancellation token? It does. So we want to do cancellation token on both of these. And then what are you squawking about? Oh, because this guy should be returning nullable release group. Okay. So I'm wondering if this thing should throw, though, rather than return non-null. Because the rest of the stuff throws on failure, and including, like... Yeah, I'm thinking what we do is we make this guy throw on failure. So let's do this. Come down here, we'll put a return on front of this, and then we will do... throw new valid operation exception, failed to create release group with version. Hey Nab, you Copilot, you freaking show off. This is not a logging call though, Copilot. This goes here. Inside the curly braces. There you go. Okay, that way we either get a release group created, because in most cases success is going to be what we expect, because we know the user was authenticated, or at least we found cached credentials. Can't guarantee they're good, but probably. So we get the release group. Okay, and now we want to upload file to release group. And here's a question. Is it valuable on the API side? Because the API has separate endpoints for upload release versus upload installer. Is it valuable to have separate endpoints, or should this just be separate? Should they be one endpoint with a parameter telling it the type? Because the only thing that's different on this API is when you do the upload itself. I'll just show this to you. Releases, release methods, and then if we do upload release, right? So upload release and upload installer are very similar. So let's look at upload installer. So upload installer, it does some validation checking to make sure that the user is at least allowed to upload to it. but then it creates a file upload, it sets the file type, and then moves on. And then it queues this thing up into a background processor onto a storage queue. So it creates the file upload record in the database. Great, saves it. And then this process file upload is probably poorly named, because at the end of the day, really what it's doing is it's storing the file in blob storage, but then it's sending a message on a queue to say, go process this file now, because we need to do processing on it to make sure it's not like malware or similar, right? Or if it's going to get flagged as malware, the user has to explicitly allow it through and that kind of thing, right? So we don't just let files come up and then get used immediately. They have to kind of go through some processing. It's also where we can do some validation, make sure that things are all on the up and up. But the key thing is this upload installer and upload release are almost the exact same method. Like, they're real close. And I'm wondering if this upload request should have a type on it. Kind of wondering if it should have a type on it, because this feels like something that probably should have a type on it. It really does kind of feel that way. Because then we could collapse these things into one, and that would make my life a little bit easier on the SDK side. Because then rather than ripping through two of these separate ones, because before there was a very different set of options that were passed for the installer versus the regular release thing, because the installer had to bring the package ID and the version along with it, because those weren't things that existed. But those are no longer relevant, because those are going with the release group. I'm kind of thinking, let's collapse these suckers. Let's collapse these suckers into one. Because where is this file upload type? This is down here. Yeah. So let's create a new enum over here. We'll call it add. Oh, let's see. Upload type. File type. Upload type. File type. By making it a different name, it'll also eliminate some confusion. So we're going to have an unknown as our default member. We're going to have a... zip is the wrong word for it. What is our universal package one called? Zip is probably good for now. Let's see. Release. Do we have a separate one for Delta? I don't know if it matters. Probably doesn't matter. Release package. Release. Installer. Something about like that. This probably needs to be refined. Okay. And then let's go. We're going to keep upload release, and we're going to kill upload installer. So we're going to go with from form, public required file type. File type. Spelling is hard. Okay, so we've got that. We've got that. Let's see. And then we want to make sure if let's see, upload request dot file type is file type unknown. Right? And I think what we're going to do is we're going to actually comment out zip, because I don't want to think about it right now. Let's see. I want to do this. Actually, I think we do this first. Parameter checking and then permissions checking. Let's see here. So this is actually going to be, let's see. File type. Upload request. File type is, or how about must be specified. Then we'll do bad request. Fill that off. We could do some fancier parameter checking and validation stuff, but this is just, we're going quick and easy at the moment. Okay. Yeah, and I've got a to-do of doing more error checking on the upload. And I think what we're going to do here is go with upload request, file type, switch. We'll just switch expression this guy. Let's see. So if we do file type installer, file type release, and then throw new valid operation exception, because this is, come on, Copilot, there you go. That exception case really shouldn't happen. It's only going to happen if somebody adds a new enum member like that zip and doesn't implement it here. So we'll throw in that case, but it should be fairly unreachable in most cases. I mean, it's technically possible to shove, like, because enums are just named values. Like, it is possible to, because this is 0, 1, 2. It's possible somebody shoves in a -1. Like, you can do that, and it'll roll. You shouldn't, but you can try. Like, the enum can happily accept that. Okay, so that'll go there. That'll go there. Upload installer then dies. And then I'll look at where that other... Didn't I see another upload? Nope, that's it. Update release, not upload release. That's what I got confused by earlier. That says update, not upload. Those are not the same word. Okay. Now that we've had a good lesson in grammar. Okay. And then I want to obsolete this at some point in favor of putting it in the V1 internal. This is V1 external. Oh, you know what? While we're in here doing this, let's do it. Like, we're killing it off anyway. We only didn't do it before because it was going to be painful, but let's do it here. So this is going to be V1 internal. And then let's just do upload. We don't need the requires authorization because that's covered here. Then we just whack this. I don't know if this to do is actually something legitimate, but we're going to leave it for now. Okay, so we've changed a bunch of stuff. The nice part is that should have broken a bunch of tests because, well, let's just go test, run all tests. I've got a reasonable test suite. Audio via car, video on phone, and central console. Okay, you have to promise, though, that you're keeping your eyes on the road. I do not want to have your next message be, you got into a car wreck because of me. Trust me, this stream is being recorded. You can go back and catch it later. Let's see. Have you had any bad or worse stories to share from past jobs, teams? I once worked in a team where developers didn't talk or shared about any implementation detail. One highly requested feature from users was a search function that took 10 months to implement. Wow. Wow. Like, when I hear stories like that, the 10 months, that that feels like one of those things where several things have to go wrong for you to reach that point. Yeah, I mean, so the very first one that comes to mind, it was early on in my career. I had just been laid off from my first real job out of university, and there was one of the guys who got laid off with me called me up, said, "Hey Kevin, I turned down a job with this company, but they're hiring. If you're still looking for a job, maybe you should go consider interviewing with him." I went, "Oh, great!" Like, admittedly, that should have been red flag number one, that my colleague had turned down the job, but he was a senior, I was a junior. I just assumed, hey, this was, too junior for him, and he's giving me a good opportunity, which I think that was part of it. I go and interview. Interview went great. The only thing I didn't like, it was a Ruby on Rails position. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I prefer my C#, but I can do Ruby and web development, and I'm a young guy who just got laid off, who'd really like his salary back, and they offered me my same salary. What? Perfect, right? That makes up for the being laid off. So I took the job, and then promptly spent the next, I think, like 2.5 weeks teaching myself Ruby on Rails, because I had never done it in my life. Like, I was surprised I did so well on the interview. They called me the same day to offer me the position. Apparently I did well. I was like, oh, that's good, because I didn't know the language or framework at all. So, that was kind of winging it. But I went into the job, and the very first day, they hired 2 of us. So the company I was at had laid off a whole slew of people, and me and somebody else who I'd worked with before, we both got hired on at this new place. And we come in, and they do the usual team orientation stuff, that kind of thing. And it was already kind of a little weird. Like, I kind of got the impression that the team wasn't real cohesive, that there was kind of some infighting type situations. But, like, it's your first day, everybody's all smiles, whatever. And so we were given a bug to go and implement, or a bug to go and fix, not to implement. That would be bad. And it was a real simple one. Like, it was some sort of, like, exception is thrown when you do XYZ, and the steps were real obvious, happened every time, pretty simple. It was like, oh, okay. So we spent a little bit of time getting our environment set up, code cloned, everything up and running, which there wasn't too much to the app. Like, it was a MySQL database, the server, that kind of thing. It was like, okay, so it took us, 45 minutes or something to try to work through their README and get it installed, which, to their credit, they had documented. And the steps were pretty good, except for the steps were written for somebody working on a terminal. And so it was all terminal commands that they were having you run. I'm like, that's a little interesting. And that should have been red flag number 2. I was like, it's weird, because I'd asked them what tools they use to develop in, and they're like, you use whatever you want. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. I like that too. So I had pulled down the JetBrains tool for doing Ruby, and me and my buddy, we spent a little time, tracked the bug down, fixed it, got it implemented. When we opened the PR, the team lead came over and said, hey, walk me through, what you found and how you fixed it. I was like, oh, sure, we can do that. So we start, I pull open the IDE, launch it up, and, I set a breakpoint, and I step through. I'm like, yeah, so you can see, I stepped here, we examine the variable, we see the code, and the team lead goes, wait, back up. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, did I miss something? He's like, how did you do that? And I was like, the whole concept of breakpoints and ID were a foreign concept. Like, they were printf level debugging. Like, you console write your stuff and you debug that way. I was like, what the heck? Like, this whole IDE thing was new technology. I'm like, oh boy. Yeah, that was red flag number 3. And I can't remember. I think I started looking for a new job either the next day or the day after. I didn't even make it through my first week, and I was already hunting for a replacement job. Like, there was a lot of bad stuff. Like, the company ended up going out of business. It was not a great situation. So, Yeah, that's definitely one of the first ones that come to mind. There's always a little there's always some potential problems at every thing. Like the worst ones I think are when people personalities clash. See, I'm scared. They want to rewrite their PHP backend to Go to implement parallel computing in their shopping cart system. But I've never written PHP. You know, that might not be that bad. So, and honestly, one of the things that I have found really, really helpful and take it with a grain of salt, if you have access to Copilot, the explain command is a godsend for being able to figure out code. Because it is like the number of times where you're looking at a small bit of code and like, for example, right? So I do this and I say, hey, Copilot / explain. Right? And you can do this in VS Code or whatever, right? And it builds out what is usually a fairly good explanation of what everything is with hyperlinks to relevant documentation. Like, this is better than a Google search, because quite often you, like in code, you run into like these weird symbols or the syntax you've never seen before. And it's like, what the heck is that? Is that some weird feature that I'm just unfamiliar with? Is this just a different, framework or code? Again, Copilot's like the intern who's memorized the docs. This is where it shines, where it's like, hey, I don't know what this is. Get me to the relevant bit in the docs. But yeah, like, especially when I'm in a new code base and I see something that's a little weird, this is absolutely amazing. Especially for making sure that you've rewritten. Like, you can actually even go further. How would I do this in PHP? I have no idea if this is going to work, but we're going to try it. But the Go docs already have examples. Honestly, yeah. And I don't doubt it. Like, the Go ones are very good. Yeah. So this one, you may end up doing something weird, but yeah. And again, this is AI generated. Take this with a big grain of salt. Like, some people use ChatGPT to get similar. Copilot's better than ChatGPT because it's grounded in programming stuff. But yeah, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's pretty darn good. Pikachu, welcome. We are having fun with Velopack and writing code. I don't see CMP and blame the back end. Yeah, that'll work too. And thank you, Pikachu. I've got my Mountain Dew, and I'm feeling pretty good at the moment. Oh, did I delete a line of code? Disable anti-forgery. Why did I not have this thing? Why did I not have this thing producing the right... Like, I didn't have this thing producing the right response codes. I didn't have this thing with an appropriate name. This is weird. Okay, so I apparently just did this thing all kinds of wrong. So yeah, this is all just garbage. This is all just garbage. Garbage. What moron wrote this? Okay, Copilot, freaking show off. I mean, it's right, but dear heavens. Let's see. But speaking of bad experience, one I did early in my career was not openly talking about my issues. Yes. I think I was really lucky in that I got paired with a good mentor in my career really early on. And I think that made a world of difference in terms of it. And I don't know, like, I've kind of talked to him a little bit about it. I don't think he thinks he was a great mentor, but I think he was, and I think it did a big thing. Like, there is something to be said about trying to make sure that you are in a good environment. And it's also worth understanding that what is in a good environment for some people may not be a good environment for others. Like, some people like a real fast-paced type type thing, and that helps keep them motivated and going, and they really enjoy that. And other people, that is an incredibly high stress factor, and they just cannot handle it. So like it is worth, one, identifying what is best for you, and then trying to land something that's similar. Like people who work at places similar to mine where you do a lot of like consulting, it tends to be a little bit faster pace. Like you are going, like you bill by the hour, which means you're producing value by the hour. Like there's an expectation of kind of go. And for like, I like that. I like having a variety of projects. I like bouncing around between things. I like getting a chance to help a lot of different people and work with a lot of different things. That's great for me. But I am fully aware that there are people I've worked with where that would just stress them out and they would not survive. Like, not that they're bad developers or anything. It's just that is not the type of environment that they need. They like a little bit slower. They like being able to like sink their teeth into a project and go deep. And they'll sit there. They're perfectly happy to be on a project for 6-10 years and just, leech every possible little thing out of it they can. And they like the stability and all of that goes along with it. So and there's a couple people at my current company that are kind of like that. And it does mean that there's fewer projects that they get to work on because of it, but it is important to identify which one is better. Yeah, sometimes it's both. No, there are cases when reading docs and building concepts for days and weeks is more productive than writing 100 lines of code. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's kind of why I tried to not use the phrase writing code, but like in the consulting gig, providing value is usually where it comes from. And that the value isn't always in code. Like I've worked on projects where they put me in a role where they literally named it the mentoring team, where my job was not to write a line of code. Like I was actually told at one point, take your hands off the keyboard. It's like, stop it. Your job is to help teach all of our people how to write better code. I want you pairing with all of them. It's like, oh, okay. Like I kind of enjoy that type of stuff. And so like, I really enjoyed that role. It only lasted like 6 months, but it was a really fun role while I was in it because I just got to bounce between different teams. And then, I had kind of a backlog of like small projects I could go and work on if it was ever slow. But most of the time I was never slow. There was always a queue of people coming to me with questions and, hey, can you help me with this? And hey, I'm stuck on this. Can you help me with that? And it was like, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Like writing code is great, but I think pairing with people, I might like a little bit better. Just a little bit. I kind of enjoy that, that teaching mentoring style role. Like I thrive on that. Okay, we were fixing some broken tests because I broke a lot of stuff. Okay, so first of all, we had upload release and we had upload installer. Upload installer is now dead, so we just want to make sure that we've covered the relevant use case for it, but we probably don't need all the same tests. Like, for example, requires authenticated user. That shouldn't be a thing that is required anymore. Let's see here. Let's do the happy path first. I think I usually start with happy path and work my way back. And this is probably a case where file type, and I'm going to just do this with some inline data because we'll just do this. File type, release, installer. Okay, we'll just make sure both of those work. Okay, so then down here, and I apologize, I'm kind of skimming over how a lot of these tests work. So for anybody unfamiliar with this, I really like, because I'm using minimal APIs for all this stuff, but I favor testing all of my endpoints with a very functional style test, because I like to actually see it work. I like to make sure that all the ASP.NET Core middleware and authentication and all of that is set up. So I am leveraging something called a Web Application Factory, which is a wonderful testing class from Microsoft. Technically, theirs is the generic, and I've just done my own derived class that closes over the generic. But it stands up your application in an in-memory instance. so that you can just pound on it with tests. And so my web application factory does a handful of small things, like it swaps out the database provider for using an in-memory SQLite database. That way each of my tests can just operate on an in-memory database, and then I throw it away. And it does do some callbacks to fake out the auth a little bit, so I can validate my auth, but it is worth noting that I am flowing through a slightly different code path for the auth, but it's good enough that I can validate and say, hey, this endpoint does require an authenticated user. This endpoint requires, the following claims or similar. Like I can get that far in my testing to be reasonably confident that it's going to work in production. So it's good enough for that. And it's good enough to make sure that my routing and all of that stuff works. So if I have a type that's not serializable, I have a route that's unreachable, I've typoed something in it, it catches all of those bugs, which is what I really care about most. Okay, so this sets up a complete team in my database. So that user, the team, the channel, the release group, the release, all that jazz. We create a release file for version 101 for people who care. Like I can just kind of show this thing off. My complete team setup is I make a team. The team has a single project. There's a single release channel. Inside the channel, there's release group 1.0. There's 1.0.1. Inside of each of these, we've got a couple releases inside of each of those. 2 full releases, one with a Delta package, just kind of showing the standard flow and all of that, just so that there's data in the database of something. This is kind of just like the normal setup, so I made a method because I got tired of writing it. So I was way too lazy for that garbage. Okay, so we have our release group ID. We are setting that up in our content that we are posting up when we upload this. We are going to need to add in another parameter, and this is going to be our file type, and then the value of this guy is just going to be file type. So let's see, this is string content. This will be a good test. I think we are doing string based enums, I think, and then it adds in the file, which I think those are the 3 parameters on upload request. Release group ID, file type, file. 1, 2, 3. Yep, we're good. Okay, so then we're going to post it to there. We should get an OK. File type should be release. I don't like this. So this is a good thing to point out because I see a lot of people do things weird here, right? Like they're like, well, this is a data-driven test and we're passing in file type. Therefore, like I see people do this all the time. Like if file type, right? They do something akin to this. I don't like this. This bothers me because whenever you put conditions in your test, it opens you up for bugs in your tests. And ideally, you want your tests to be bug-free. Like, I had a professor back at university that used to tell us that if you wanted to make a program fast and bug-free, delete all of the functions and all of the jump statements or conditions, right? Just statement. If you never jump and you never have like functions, your code will run very fast and will be bug-free because you'll run it once and because it's just running straight through and there's no conditional stuff, it's going to do the same thing every time. Now, the problem is you can't build a program like that, but you can build your test pretty close to it. So my preferred way of handling this is doing the expectation up here as well. So expected upload type, right? So if I do this, then I come up here and I go, okay, so given that enum, I expect this. Given that enum, right, I expect this. And so when doing a data-driven test, oftentimes rather than a condition, just bring the extra parameter up as well. Like there's no reason not to. And then it's really clear when anyone's looking at, oh, well, hang on, what is the expectation for a file type? It sits right there. So, and then we just change this out to be expected upload type. And then I think this test passes. I think. Assuming we've written all of our code correctly. Booyah. Come on. Oh. See? And this is why we write tests. Here, I'm going to move myself to the other side. So I'm not, my big head is not in the way. Let's see. Expected status code 200, but found 404. Well, that sounds like not right. And the reason it's 404, and I can recall this here, is we changed the route. Yeah, if you change the route, you should change the URL. Let's try this one more time. Come on, come on. Green check marks. Oh! 404. Okay, so now I'm confused if I've got my routes wrong. So let's go double check what I expect my routes to be. Okay, so these are V1 internal. So let's see here. So I expect there to be V1. Oh, I don't have V1 on this, do I? Finally at the train station to get my morning coffee. Always good. New car beats the next train to the next station. I believe it. Okay, I think what I'm going to do here, in an effort to make my life simpler, because sometimes I think what I expect is v1/releases/upload. But I'm just going to launch, and I'm going to look at my Swagger endpoint to make sure that that is, in fact, the correct thing. Yeah. I know. You're unhappy. Binding port. Yeah. Shut up. I don't care about you. I just want the Swagger endpoint. Oh, that's the VPK one. Where's the other one? There it goes. Okay, so just to make sure. Yeah, V1 releases upload. That's the guy. Okay, go away. V1 releases upload. Okay, so now the route should be correct. See, this is why we test this. And then a green check mark. Winner. Okay, test pass. Yay. Okay, so now we want to make, now that we got the happy path, we want to make sure that this thing actually requires auth. Whose releases, right? Yeah, releases plural. Upload. And then I don't think we care about most of this stuff, right? We don't need to pass any of this stuff. That's not needed. That's not needed. That can just go like that. Technically don't even need the file or the form. Well, we need the form data because we have to post something, which means we don't need this. Like, I'm a big fan of eliminating stuff in the tests that is not needed. We can probably even eliminate the form data. Okay, because this test here is specifically verifying that we have unauthorized, which means it shouldn't get down to invoking the method. It shouldn't get through the model binder. None of that should matter, which means we should probably be able to do this as well. Because this test is effectively making sure that when I am mapping these things, that I've remembered the requires authentication method. Isn't it a great feeling when you can do the big sections of code? Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually screenshotted a PR I did late last week where I was implementing a feature and the number of lines added was fewer than the number of lines removed. So now obviously that was a little tongue-in-cheek because part of what I did is refactored some code to share some stuff where it was being duplicated. But at the end of the day, I implemented a feature by deleting more lines than I added. So I sent it to the team joking like, hey, look, I implemented a feature with my delete key. And I got a bunch of LOLs and then a few emojis because that is important. Okay, so we've got requires authentication. We have tested the installer case. This test is now meaningless. This test is now meaningless as well. So it is covered by the extra inline data. So we fixed the broken tests by not having them exist. Now the last test in question is this one. So this is potentially the most obnoxious test I have ever written. 3 lines of code, and it is bloody annoying. Like, to the point where I have contemplated deleting this test. That's kind of how annoying it is. But hang on, I got a link. Yeah, this guy here. Where is the link to this? Yeah, so just make sure. I'm pretty sure I made this one public. Yeah, you delete on Friday, and an overambitious developer works on the weekend. Yeah, that happens a lot. No, so if you're curious on the background behind this test, there is a gist explaining it. At some point, this is going to make it onto our Velopack blog, because this is kind of a write-up of how I am doing snapshot testing. The idea here is I do not want API changes to go out accidentally. All changes to my API must be intentional changes. And so what I do is I have a copy of the current open API spec that is generated. So underneath this guy, you can see that there are 2 files. There is a received, right, which is the current test run, and then there's a verified. The verified file gets checked into the repo. The received one, it gets deleted. It only shows up when you run the test and it fails. But then this diff that it pops is actually showing the difference between them, right? We can see up at the top, verified and received. And so it is showing that, okay, on this change, I am deleting v1 upload release. Okay? I am deleting v1 upload installer. Both of those APIs are being deleted. I can scroll down here. I can see that, well, hold on. I am adding v1 releases upload. Great. We look down here a little further. Upload result is no longer a thing. That is not coming back. And instead, this upload result, which is replacing it, is being added. And I think these are the same things. File upload ID and file name. You can double check. File upload ID, file name. Yeah, so that one's just a move down here. But then there's this addition of this enum of unknown release and installer, the enum names, the enum values. Those guys exist here. So this is an acceptable change. And the way we accept it is we take the receive text, we copy all of it, we go to the verified file, we paste it, and then we run the test one more time, which should blow away the receive thing, and the test should go green. Because now the received contents should match the approved or the verified or approved versions of it. But it also means that now in my commit, it's going to be real clear to everybody that, hey, this one here is updating. See, that's now going to work. Where'd it go? In my test. This now documents the API change. So it's a very obnoxious test, but it means that it is impossible for me to change anything about my API surface without it being real explicit, which I kind of wanted. Why did my update NuGets not merge? Hang on. View pull request. Build failed. Interesting. That concerns me a little bit. We might have to look at that in a moment, but for now we're going to focus on this. Okay. So that, I think, is all test passing. We're just going to run it all real quick to make sure I didn't miss anything. Because I've got reasonable test coverage. If they all go green, I'm pretty confident at least base functionality is there. Like there's plenty of edge cases and things that I'm sure fail or possible failures, but I've got enough test coverage that I'm real happy with it. Okay. If it's not 100% coverage, it's worthless. Yeah, so I usually tell people that code coverage is a negative metric. Like, you don't have 100% coverage, you have 0% uncovered. Because the stuff that's covered just means executed as part of a test. It doesn't mean it's actually tested. So the stuff that's covered, you don't know if it's actually covered until you examine the contents of the test. Because I could delete all the asserts out of the test, have great coverage, but the tests are meaningless because the tests are garbage. But the uncovered blocks of code, I can guarantee aren't tested. Like I can make a statement about the uncovered bits. Hard to make a statement about the covered bits without looking at the tests. So I usually like to invert it to people. So it's not, hey, do you have 70% coverage? It's, are you okay with 30% non-coverage? Okay, so let's go here. Let's see. And let's just quickly review these changes just to make sure I'm not doing anything stupid that I don't think about. So I added the enum, great. Added the, oh, we didn't do a test for this check. Let's add that real quick because that is an easy thing to cover. Okay. Let's see. So this is going to be something like fact. Hey, Copilot, you want to write it for me? With invalid release group, terms bad request. Let's see, how did it do? Wow, that's actually not bad. That's not that bad. So the key line here is it went GUID new GUID for the release group ID. File storage is meaningless because we're not asserting on it. The team is needed, but also like the setup complete team is needed to make sure that there's something there. That, okay. Let's test this. Let's see, have you ever had the chance to select applications for junior roles? I'm allowed to instruct and train developers in about half a year, but I don't know what would qualify as a good catch. Yes, yes, yes. It's actually been a discussion among me and my colleagues because we are oftentimes looking for those really good juniors. And I will say this, there's some things to look for. However, I'm going to put a little asterisk next to it. There have been a number of people we have hired over the years that by all reasonable metrics, they shouldn't have been good. And they turned out to be absolutely amazing. So there's an extra criteria that's like a gut reaction of this person, like there's something I see in this person. And we've had this happen to us now 3 times where I work, where the person did not look good on paper. They didn't necessarily interview very well, but we're like, there's something there. There is something about this person that makes us think that they're going to be amazing. And they were. And so don't ignore your gut reaction. I'll put it that way, because sometimes that is worthwhile. But I guess the key things to look for, if you're looking for a junior role, you are probably not looking for somebody that has a lot of experience or skills. And so it's hard to assess juniors. Like, we often rate a junior as somebody just coming out of university with like a 4-year computer science degree or similar. That's kind of where we started. Sometimes there are people who are doing like a career change type situation that are coming in. But usually when we say junior, that's kind of the target range that we're expecting. So what we are looking for in terms of skills are basic understanding of computer science. We like to ask questions around object-oriented programming, polymorphism. We usually like to poke at testing a little bit, because especially for a junior role, when interviewing them, you should be able to push the junior to a point where you find the edge of their knowledge, which is usually not terribly far, but sometimes they surprise you. And so we like to find somebody that has a reasonable grasp on some of the basic fundamentals, because ideally we don't want to be teaching syntax. We want to be teaching the actual like science part of computer science, not, here's how syntax works. So we're looking for basic levels of competence in some of those things. And then the more they know about extra stuff, anything related to DevOps or cloud related stuff or software patterns or similar, all of those things are good, right? We expect them to be able to give us at least academic level answers if they're coming out with a 4-year degree. If they're on a career change, we sometimes don't grill them as hard on like terminology, because somebody coming from like a career swap probably is going to get the terminology wrong. And so we harp more on, do they understand the concepts? Because we've had people come in who don't use the right words, but they understand the concepts, and they tend to be really good. Like on paper, they sound worse, but because they don't have that formal training, every little bit that they've learned, they've had to work harder for. And so they're probably a harder worker and a self-motivated learner. So there's things like that where like they may look a little worse on paper, but the adversity that they had to overcome to get to that point is probably higher. And so they might be better in that regard. The other thing that I always look for is somebody who is teachable or trainable. So especially on a junior, I usually like to correct them on, because it's usually not hard to get them to say something that's slightly incorrect. And then I usually like to correct them at least once in an interview, just to see how they take correction, right? Like, is this person going to like fight me on a code review? Are they going to sit quietly? Are they going to ask questions in dialogue? Like, I'm looking to see how well is this person going to be trained, because like we've got lots of really smart people where I work. We can teach anything, but we can only teach somebody who's teachable. And so trying to kind of tease that out of how well will this person learn is a huge thing. And then the other thing that I look for as well is anything that indicates motivation for learning. Like sometimes people will look for like, hey, do you do like any open source projects or learning at home or all of that stuff? And they're all kind of trying to tease out that same sort of thing of how motivated of a learner are you? Is this like, hey, I want to put in my 8 hours and I'm cutting out? Or is this, yeah, I'm here, I want to learn, I want to do a ton of stuff? Like on one hand, you don't want somebody where they have no life and they just lock themselves in a basement and code, because that's not great either, right? That's swinging the pendulum too far the other way. But on the other hand, I want somebody who while they're like in the office learning, that they're hungry to learn and they're actively seeking to get better, right? Like I love so many of my colleagues because we will have these debates on what code is right and how to do things better. And at the end of the day, it's all about trying to get better and learning from each other. And you want somebody who's going to mesh well with that kind of culture. At least that's where we're at. So yeah, so kind of breaking it down, I would harp on making sure they understand fundamentals, making sure that they are teachable. and then making sure that they have a good aptitude for learning. That's kind of where I would go. Let's see. I say the person has to fit into the team. Most stuff can be taught. Then I work in teams where people said that, but never took care of the junior and was surprised the junior dev didn't develop as they wished. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that we try to do very quickly with a lot of our juniors is we try to make sure that they're paired up. Like where I work, we call it a mentor. But at the end of the day, really it is making sure that there is somebody there to be that pair for the junior. Like that goes so far. I was incredibly fortunate when I was a junior to be paired with a great senior. Like it made a world of difference. So making sure that you have somebody there, and it can be the same somebody, but it should be understood that the junior is going to probably leech some of that person's time and energy. So maybe don't have one person with like 6 juniors. That's a bad idea. So spread the load a little bit. Does it honestly look negative when you see career change people, like in my case, whereas a bit older than university grads? No, Pikachu, I don't think it's a negative. And in some ways it's almost a positive. Like some of the ones that I've liked or some of the hires that we've done that I've liked the best have been career change peoples. Like I've had somebody who's come from the military. We've had people that have come from working at coffee shops, or people who have come from various trades that have started working for us. And because they didn't have that university background, they lack the terminology, and sometimes they can't give academic answers, but they oftentimes understand software development from a very pragmatic perspective. And so it's a very different thing. Like it'll be weird. You'll say something like bubble sort and they'll look at you funny and they think that you're talking about going outside and popping bubbles or something. It's like, no. Like that's an actual algorithm. Like, oh, I've never heard that name before. It's like, right. Okay. That's something that in university they would have made you suffer through. And so like all the university grads will laugh about it and go, oh yes, we wrote bubble sort many times. But somebody who's a career change will go, yeah, that word is weird. It's like, yeah, it's one of those things that most universities teach. It's not practical in most modern day stuff because every language and framework worth its salt will do the sorting for you. But they teach it because they want people to understand kind of the fundamentals of what happens with sorting under the hood and why certain things are faster than others. So it's like there's a knowledge part there, but the person who does the career change, they usually approach it of, hey, I wanted to figure out how to do something. I'm going to figure out how to, build an app that does this. I want to figure out how to make this, video game editor or whatever it might be, right? Like I see a lot of those people come in, and when they do that, it's actually more impressive to me that they do it without university training. I spent so long in my immigration process that I get nervous about being such a late starter. No, I would almost say if you can have demonstrable knowledge and skills, that's more important than how old or whether it's a career change, or honestly even over the CS degree. Like this, there's a debate among me and my colleagues about how important a 4-year degree is for software development, and there is an argument to be made that you don't need a university degree in computer science to get a job in the field. There is a very strong argument to be made that you coming in and learning and doing it on your own and coming in with demonstrable skills, like me personally as an interviewer, I like that better because it shows me somebody who is, one, capable of learning and motivated to learn. Like those are a lot more valuable to me. Like I sat in one interview where we were talking to the interviewee and we were going back and forth. And I, at one point I just kind of looked at the interview. I'm like, okay, relax, calm down. Because the interviewee was clearly very nervous. They were switching careers, not used to it. And I was like, relax, you're doing great. We're just confused because like they had built this game editor. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how you did this in such little time with no training. And they're like, oh, it was easy. I was like, okay, you don't understand how complicated of a thing it is that you just did. Like, I'm looking at this code, you're explaining it to me, you're telling me you didn't do any of this until like a year ago, and somehow you managed to build this whole thing out? Well, yeah, I just, learned online and that. It's like, you don't understand. That is freaking impressive. Like, seriously, like, because the amount of learning, and like, we ended up hiring them, and they've been doing amazing, like, rapid career growth because they came in from a different career, but really good at learning, really motivated to learn. Yeah, I think the biggest problem is the junior level market at, like, so I'm in the US. Yeah, and supercharges, I'm guessing, in Germany. Yeah, the junior market feels crazy, and there is a very, like, in the US, it's kind of saturated. Like, there's a lot of juniors, and we've kind of gone through these ups and down waves where sometimes it's like everybody's hiring and then everybody's laying off, and like we do this a little bit. And the unfortunate part for a lot of the juniors is if it's in a state where a bunch of like companies have laid people off, those juniors are now competing against people with 3, 4, 5 years of experience that just got laid off. And some companies are like, shoot, I can pick up somebody with 5 years of experience into a junior role and pay them that. Yeah. Like, or I can get a slightly more experienced engineer for a little bit more. Yeah. Like, sometimes that's where it ends up happening. And so people occasionally get passed over, especially if it's like, right now the job market has a lot of applicants and not a lot of openings. And so supply and demand kind of starts to take hold a little bit there. But yeah, the other thing that I really like is people who do a career change that come over from something else that maybe are a little bit older. They also tend to have a little more life experience and be a little bit more realistic in how, like, the real world works, rather than like a university grad who has never really had a real job. Because some university grads, like, they work a part-time job to put themselves through school, and those ones tend to be awesome, right? They've got some real practical experience. Like, we were discussing at my job the other day how much retail experience, like somebody who works in a retail store, how valuable that is in the actual software industry as well. Like, there's something to be said about somebody who got experience doing customer service, selling things, and now we're going to put them in more of a skilled trade where they're building software. Those kind of soft skills are sometimes lacking in people without that kind of life experience, and people with a little more life experience who are maybe career changing tend to have that better. So yeah, don't worry too much about coming in later or similar. Like, my opinion, if a company looks you off because of that, they're probably not a company you want to work for anyway. Yeah, the code has to be elegant and prepared for tomorrow's problem versus it has to work to be shipped somewhat fast. Yeah, no, and there's a lot of truth to that. The saying that I often use with people is shipping is an application's number one feature. You must have it. If you don't ship, it doesn't matter how elegant or beautiful your code is. Like, until you ship, it does not matter. So make sure you always ship something. Okay. I wanted to actually see why this test failed, because I think this test is decent. I haven't started hunting here in Australia yet, but I'm determined to learn as much as I can before the end of the year. Good. And honestly, depending on what your availability is, hunting for internships, and I don't know if it's different in Australia, but like in the US, we will often hire interns, and they kind of come in two flavors. Some companies do summer internships because our school year is kind of like September, October through, April, May-ish, depending on where you're at. And so people will hire interns for just the 3 months out of the summer. I guess, June, July, August we're in the Northern Hemisphere. And so we'll get summer interns while they're out of school, because some interns don't like to do an internship while they're in school. But other times we'll get an intern that comes to work for us during the school year as well. sometimes it counts as like partial credit for their university courses or similar. And sometimes it's just because they were looking to have a job. And if they're good enough, usually they tend to be like seniors getting ready to graduate type situation. But that type of experience can be incredibly valuable. I never had an internship going through university. I worked at a very, well, I guess that's not true. I sort of had an internship. It was kind of a weird situation with me though, because I had, my last year of college wasn't a full year. I was like only a couple classes short of graduating. So yes, I technically was an intern for a bit while I finished up some classes, but it was a weird situation. But oftentimes that kind of practical on the job training is also really, really valuable. And some companies use it as a extended interview process because you bring on an intern for a fixed period of time. By the end of that period of time, you probably have a really good idea whether that intern is somebody you want to hire or not. Like you'll see how they work, their work ethic, how quick they learn. And like it's oftentimes some places use it as an extended interview. And I will also say this, just because a company turns you down and doesn't hire you, don't take that personally. Like that, it is oftentimes not always a reflection of you. Sometimes it's literally, they just don't have a spot for you. Like the company I work for, we try really hard not to overhire. Like we don't want to have to lay people off because like we run out of work or similar. So we tend to be slower in our hiring because we don't want to have to get into that layoff situation. And I don't believe, just checking my memory real quick, I think in 10 years we've never laid anyone off due to lack of work. Right? We've got kind of, some internal tasks and stuff that we put people on when they're between projects and whatnot. But I don't think we've ever laid anyone off due to lack of work. Yeah, 100%. That's the best advice about not getting a job. Yeah, or not getting that role. Yeah, 100% willing to do an internship. And it is worth noting too, some internships are paid in addition. Like some places do unpaid internships and some places do paid internships. It is worth noting though that an internship from the company's perspective is a cost to the company, because any good internship is going to have somebody that is touching base with you, reviewing your work. Like they don't want to just put you in a closet and let you code for a few months and then kick you out. Like that's not good for anybody. It's bad for you. It's bad for them. All over it doesn't work. So there is oftentimes for an internship going to be somebody that's touching base with you, ideally daily, hopefully. And so if you are applying for internships, that's a key question to ask is, who will I be working with or touching base with and how often, right? Like, and you want something that's at least daily, at least every other day. I wouldn't go less than that, ideally more, right? If they say, hey, you're going to be working as part of this team, even better. That's great. That's awesome. That's what you want. But then because it's somewhat of a drain on the company because they have to put somebody to work with the intern. One of my former bosses, he used to say he wants the value coming out of the intern to offset the cost of the time that the more senior person is working with the intern. So it's like, as long as the intern's a net zero, that's actually a win for the company because now they've got a net zero interview that's extended and really accurate. So it's that you, at least for our company, that's kind of what they shoot for with their interns is, hey, we want the interns to be net zero in terms of cost, right? Like there's going to be some cost to pay the interns. There's going to be some cost to the senior person working with the interns, but the interns are hopefully also producing work. So, arguably it's usually slower and of maybe a less quality than somebody more senior to them, but they're producing something and that's providing value. So, trying to measure that and getting to the net negative is usually the target goal. Okay. talked for too long and now I forgot where I was going. Releases, uploads, and I wanted to know why this bad request wasn't working. Let's see here, because we expected to hit. Oh, we don't have. This should have been a not found, not a bad request. No, it was a not found. Okay, so the problem is the assertion that this wrote. Because if the GUID is bad, it should be not found, not bad request. And secretly, it's going to return not found as well if the user doesn't have access, because from their perspective, any release group GUID that you don't own is not found. Okay, public async upload release with oh dang nabbit, did it just write the whole test for me? Freaking show off Copilot. Ah, you forgot the return type. Ha, see, I'm still the developer. Let's see, what did it do here? Unknown. It did pull out the ID for the file type. Dang nabbit, I think that's right. Copilot, I love and hate you all at the same time. Our relationship is quite complicated. Dang it. You did it perfectly. Why must you show off, Copilot? Why must you show off? Okay. Back to reviewing this. Okay, file type. Well, here, let's do it this way. I usually prefer to do it this way. So stage them as I review them. So enum, fine. Release methods. We have the if condition. We wrote test for it. We have all of this. I kind of like doing the split view. So this is a good thing to be aware of. Like for your diff tools, every diff tool worth its salt gives you these same kind of buttons, at least the top two, right? Like you get your inline and your side by side, and which one is better depends on what type of changes you're looking at. Like right here, the inline is miserable to look at because I can't see the end result. So like I'm going to go side by side so that I can see, okay, this is the end result, right? I can see there's a bunch of deletions, but you know, trying to do that is garbage. Leverage that as much as possible, right? This case we can't hit right now without doing some wacky stuff with the enum, so it's not worth my time to test it. Okay, upload request takes in a file type. Great. We change this guy to upload. Great. That's just a using cleanup. Great. These are all the tests. They all pass. I'm not worried about it. And then this is the API surface changes where we saw v1 upload release dies, v1 upload installer dies. Then we get down a little ways. We see it's v1 releases upload now. Come down here. We see upload result is technically being deleted, but upload result is then being re-added down lower along with the file type enum. Great. Stage. Okay. Let's see. Collapsing upload endpoints into a single endpoint. Now just specify a file type rather than calling separate endpoints. So we are going to, we didn't make a branch. Create branch. Let's see. Upload endpoints. Commit change. Push and create pull request. Yep. Send it. And then go away. Create pull request. You on GitHub. Of course you open over there. Okay, so this guy should go and do the needful. I am mildly interested now in why this guy is giving me crap. Is it built and worked locally? What was the failure here? It was a test failure. GitHub. Right. Okay. I'm confused. GitHub. Okay, where is the failing test? Workload updates, process. Failed one. I must be crazy because I don't see the output for the failed test. But one of them failed. It seems like it's trying to indicate this was the output for the test, but this is just the startup. Like, I wonder if we got the, I wonder if it ran these side by side and got them out of order. Oh, is it the stupid snapshot test? Oh, I wonder if it's the snapshot test. Not equals. Yes, the API surface changed. Oh, oh, I bet you when I rev the NuGet packages. Oh, I bet you I know it. Okay, so we're gonna let's this is gonna actually be easiest if I rebase this preemptively. Okay, so if we go here, then we're gonna rebuild all. Because ideally what should happen is rebuild all to pulls down all the new NuGet packages. Because I saw earlier that I had some NuGets with vulnerability in them. Which, if you see the little yellow banner in Visual Studio pop up, like, fix the vulnerabilities. Don't let them sit. Izzy, have a good one. Yeah, hopefully same time next week. Again, we'll see how things go and how buying a house goes for me. So stay tuned. Watch, for anybody curious, watch either my Twitter or Discord for updates on if I have to cancel my stream for any reason. Like if something comes up or I'm going to run late, I usually will post on Discord and Twitter and call it a day. Okay, so we'll rev those. Okay, because that apparently there was a couple more updates. Like I've got Dependabot turned on for this repo, but it only fires once a week. And I think it fires on Monday. Microsoft tends to release things on Tuesday. So it sometimes means I'm delaying a little bit. I should probably kick the Dependabot to like a Wednesday run. Okay, now if I run you, what I expect to have happen is this obnoxious test up here to fail. But when it fails, it should give me a nice diff. I'm guessing one of the packages that I'm referencing changed to version. You see, yeah, see, there it is. NSWAG got updated from, like, this diff is backwards, right? It was 14.08 and got updated to 14.1, breaking my test. You suck. You suck. Again, this test is both a blessing and a curse to me. I love it and I hate it all at the same time. Like it's kept me from accidentally releasing API changes and made me go, oh shoot, I didn't realize, by renaming that object that was actually part of the public API. But like I think I've slowly cleaned most of these up and this test is now just an annoyance to me. Okay. Let's see, 2 more updates for the packages and then the version number here. So updating last packages and updating open API spec test. Yep, commit push. Okay, so force push because we rebased, and I only rebased on this other one so that, because this other one should merge first. But okay, so there's all that. There's all that. See, line coverage, not bad. 83% of my lines are covered, or more accurately, 70% of my lines are not covered. My branch coverage could use some work. 40% uncovered, but again, I'm very confident that all of my happy path stuff is well tested. And so there's very few bugs that are slipping through because of a lack of coverage. Most of the bugs that have slipped through recently have been because my tests don't match the infrastructure perfectly, because it's kind of hard to test everything. Like, I run Azure Storage Explorer for testing rather than a real storage account. Sometimes there's differences. Okay, we go here, auto merge enabled, we're good. Okay, so that's going to roll out. And then more importantly, once this thing goes out to main, this is actually going to roll it all the way out my production environment for me, which is pretty slick. Because right now my pipeline, we full send to prod. We don't beat around the bush here. We just send it. Beauty of being a startup, you can go fast, break stuff. Okay, back to the SDK. So down here, once we get our release group, we then want to rip through each of these assets, and then we want to push these things up. And I think what we can do is we can just tweak this thing here, because this is no longer relevant. Trying to think of what is actually needed, because we're going to need this. We're going to need this channel name here. I'm kind of curious why I did channel this way with the options, because it's not like channel is optional, except for the fact that I declared it optional. So what if I just don't make it optional? Problem solved. Supercharge, great having you. Feel free to drop back anytime, and thank you. Hopefully the new house goes through well. I appreciate all of the comments, even the rabbit trailing. Like, I definitely don't mind it. Let's see. Use primary constructor. Yeah, sure, we can primary constructor that beast. It feels weird, but you know what? We can do it. We can do it. That's not going to give me a problem here, is it? No. Primary constructors are just a compiler trick. Do I click the scary button? Preview 4 is out. Preview 3 fixed my bugs. So okay, so hold on. We don't need these bangs down here because we null check those things already. So those things go away. Channel we know is now non-null, so we don't have to do any sort of weird null checking garbage anymore. So this is a wasteful thing. And then I think what I want to do is I actually want to just steal some of my testing code. Right? This is why we write tests, because then we can poach the code as samples for how to do this thing right. So if I want to upload a thingy, I make something that looks kind of like this. Right? In fact, I want all of this. This is kind of exactly the code that I want to use. Okay, so if we come down here, it's going to be something akin to this. We're going to need the release group ID. The form data is in there. We're going to do something like this. And so this is going to end up, rather than being... Why did the other one need channel? Oh, channel's no longer needed in here, because channel is part of the release group. And then this just becomes release group ID. Boop, 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 boop. And then we're going to need a release group ID in here somehow with release group ID. We're going to need that guy to make it in somehow. And then that goes away. Then we're going to need something akin to this. And then this is just going to become file type. This needs a comma because I'm not a moron. And then this is going to be release. Right? Because that's what we were passing over here was release. Yep. Okay, so that goes there, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there. Form data goes away. File content goes away. File name goes away. Okay, that goes like that. And then before we had this is our path, we want this to be the new path. So that goes away. We don't need this is just the unit test comment. That goes away. So this guy will post and send it up. Okay, I think that works. And honestly, we could do basically the same code. Hey, Society Dog. So working on updating the Velopack SDK. So anybody's interested, it is this guy here. So Velopack, just in case, because I guess I didn't really define it, it is a installer technology SDK library bit that can do cross-platform installers. It's I'll call it a spiritual successor to the Squirrel installer, if anyone's familiar with that. Yeah, low barrier for entry, auto migrations, builds quick, works across a bunch of languages. We have a hosted service because if you just want to use the library, if you just want to use the library and the SDK to build installers and you want to host them yourself, that's free. Like, have fun, knock yourself out. If it works well, we'd really appreciate a line in the Discords so that we know that like people are getting value out of it, because we hear the bad cases. It'd be nice to hear success stories too. So, but yeah, so there is that. But for people who don't want to think about hosting their own installers, we have a hosted service that we are working on getting spun up as a SaaS offering for people who were like, you know what, I don't want to think about that. Let me give you some money and make the problem go away. So that is what we are working on here, is the SDK that pushes the release up, the releases up to the SaaS service, which we have called Velopack Flow. So not well documented right now because it's not officially released. So we'll call this preview. I'm thinking what I might do though, kind of tempted. You seem to be so good at making problems go away. I don't know about that. Sometimes people say that I'm really good at making problems. I try to do both equally. Yeah, not a problem. Okay, so all of this stuff here, because this is just pulling in release data, file name, and then this is the base. But awesome stuff you do. Thank you. I appreciate that. I try to I have fun coding, and so I try to just share that with others. I'm thinking because this method is going to be identical for the installer aside from that one line. I think we just make a parameter. I think we just make the thing is I need the enum. Need the enum. Here's what we do. We go down here. Actually, no. We do this. We blatantly steal from myself. It's not plagiarism if you steal from yourself, because I implicitly have permission to steal from myself. Come down here, we replace the word public with the word file, and look at that. Now we've got a file type. Okay, and then yeah, this thing. Take me there. And then we're gonna do file type, because this is private. We can get away with this garbage. Okay, and then this becomes file type string. Done. Okay, And then what is your problem here? File local type file type cannot be used in a member signature in a non-file local type. Can I do that? Oh, I can't. Oh, because this, oh, if I had a partial, this wouldn't work. Okay, I get it. I get it. So the file access modifier restricts it to only being used in this file itself. And because you can declare C# types across multiple files if you decorate them with partial, right? So you could do this. That would then break, because then I have a private method which is accessible in all of the partial files, but it takes a parameter that's only available in this one. So what we'll do is we'll make this guy private, and we'll just take this little curly brace and go whoop, bring you on down. Problem solved. Right? Because I don't want to expose it. I want to keep it basically the same. And then I don't need any of this. This whole method goes away. We're gonna do this. We're gonna go whoop, and we're gonna go whoop. That's the technical term. I think it's important that you have the right whoop noise to go along with it. Okay, and then file type release, and then we're gonna do basically the same thing down here, but we're gonna change this to installer. Here we go. Okay, just checking this, because this guy really only needs to be this now. We don't need... Hang on, what is asset file name? Installer file. Oh, so this just really needs to be installer file. Then we get rid of this. Then actually, before we get rid of this, let's just jump to here, and then we say this file gone, deleted. We don't need you at all. Go away. Okay. That gets built up, creates the options. Boy, I'm not now liking that I've got basically identical code in both of these cases. Because I could feed in, where does this releases directory come from? I could feed in both of these. I could feed in this stuff. Let's move this bit of code inside of here. Well, hang on. Before I get too carried away. If I move that code inside, I don't really even need the options class. Because at the end of the day, it's looking for a stream and a file name. But if I pass in the file name and the release directory, I can do all of this stuff. I can pass in the channel and the service URL. Maybe I just add parameters here and I get rid of the upload options altogether. It's not really going to buy me much at all. Yeah, where are the usages of this guy? Are they all inside that one file? I bet you they are. Bet you they are. So that's itself. Hang on. Big head out of the way. Okay, so upload options is itself. Client is where we're looking. And this is also itself. I don't know why it says containing type unknown. Okay. So they are all right here. So if we just pass in releases directory and installer file, that gets us to here. Then we pass in channel and service URL. So really we want to do something like this. And channel and service URL. And then we can kill off all of this. Let's collapse you. So rather than options, we have string release directory, string file name, Yeah, thank you, Copilot. That's remarkably helpful. You frickin' show off, but yes, that is exactly what I was going for. So this then becomes, well, we need to bring you and you in. We're going to do this and this. And let's see, this becomes file stream. This becomes file name. We don't need the options anymore because we're going to get rid of that. This becomes file name. This becomes service URL. And then do we need channel anymore? I don't think we need channel anymore. We shouldn't need channel at this point because channel goes along with the release group. Yes. So channel goes away. See, and now by doing this, we eliminated a little bit of what was getting in the way. So that goes like that. That makes our life significantly better. This becomes release directory and asset file name, and then service URL. So many balls in the air. Is this all self-learned? Sorry, I'm struggling to answer that because it's from a philosophical perspective, all learning is self-learned. But practically no. Like, so I do have a computer science degree, but I've done a lot of different training. Like, I have a few different Microsoft certifications and similar. I will say a lot of learning has come from like on the job type training of different projects. So that's been a big motivation for me. But the hard part, like some people measure things in years of experience. I hate that metric. I think it's hours of experience, not years of experience. And the reason I go to hours is because some developers, like they do their 9 to 5 and they log off and that is it, right? And there's that old adage of, you know, it takes like 10,000 hours before you become an expert or learn something well type situation. And the developers who spend, you know, the extra hours at work learning, or the ones who work on their own kind of side projects, or they spend their time reading technical books or similar, like they get a lot more hours. And I think they reach that level of expertise quicker because of it. And not all hours of learning are the same. So yes, like some of it comes from like just experience of working in a lot of different projects. Some comes from on-the-job training. Some comes for studying for Microsoft certs, because there's quite a bit of learning to be done there. Yeah, a little bit of both. I'm gonna put flow on here because it really should have the name on it. Yeah, but I do like, there's something to be said about trying to keep track of all of the state in your head. Sometimes I do that. Like that is one of the things that I feel like I do fairly well is I have a decent memory. And so I can oftentimes juggle quite a few things. So this one is doing the Velopack service options, but it's only using it for endpoint, which is only used for the base URL. I kind of feel like I want to kill off this method altogether and do options.velopack base URL, because that hits into the other overload, and then I can kill off the first one, I think is what I'm going for. So I just wanted to try learning C# code for fun. So it took some video courses to get started, just doing it for fun. And the missus wanted an app for his Sims 4, and I found out if I have some project I learned, I can't remember from just reading stuff, docs, etc. No, that I think is perfect. Like that is oftentimes one of my first recommendations for people who want to learn something is come up with something you want to build. Because oftentimes, and ideally make it as small as possible, right? Like, you want to set goals, you want them to be easily measurable and attainable. And then when you hit those, like, at minimum, have a small little mental party for yourself, because those are actually things that you've accomplished. Like, ideally, if you could write down, hey, I want an app that does X, Y, and Z. When you have an app that does that, that's an accomplishment right there. And then you can add on to it and say, well, now that I've got X, Y, and Z, I want to, add on, this other feature or this other thing, right? And then keep adding to your learning as you go. Because I think a lot of developers learn best by hands-on doing. And I think it's good that you've found out the way you like to learn. Like, I often ask that question to new developers is, how do you learn best? Because some developers really want a lot of like hands-on, like pair programming. Hey, I like working through problems. Hey, I like to be able to verbalize, talk things out loud. And then some developers are like, no, I want you to talk, and then I want you to go away and let me struggle on this for a little bit, because I kind of need to work through this myself to make sure that it actually sinks in. And I'm like, I'm fine with however you want to learn. Like, the important part is that you've learned it yourself and you know it. Yeah, and honestly, a lot of that just comes from years of experience, being able to see and do magic. Like, sometimes people are like, oh, it seems so simple when you do it. It's like, well, yeah, but that comes from years of experience of doing the wrong thing to figure out kind of where the right thing comes in. Like, it starts to become really simple as you go. But that's like with anything. Like, you watch any person who does something professionally, they always make it look easy. It's never as easy as it seems. There's an old adage of, if the code is easy to read, it was hard to write. And people oftentimes forget that it's like, oh, I guess, like, it kind of conceptually makes sense when you think about it. Like, you go up and pick up a New York Times bestseller, it's easy to read usually, right? But that doesn't mean that the author is somehow less skilled or whatever. Like, arguably, they're probably more skilled, because they probably had to go through revision after revision after revision to get it to that point. And that's and oftentimes you don't see that struggle and the turmoil, whereas with code, we often see that. Like, so there's a little bit of a thing. So it's okay if it doesn't look good at first, and it's okay if you struggle. That's completely normal. Yeah, it reminds me of the same my mentor says, it took me 15 years to do it in 20 minutes. Yeah, I like that, Pikachu. Yeah. Yeah, and Society Dog, if you've got something, if it's something that you've done like open source and you've got questions and want to share, like, feel free to post. Like, I definitely don't mind, and I'm always happy to rabbit trail and go and look at code that people have, because oftentimes I find that people learn best when they are looking at real examples. And, we're looking at, real life SDK sample here, but sometimes people look at like libraries like this and they go, oh, I could never build something like that. It's like, yeah, but you didn't see all the hours that went in to get to this point. Like, there's hundreds and thousands of hours in libraries like this that, like, you're not expected to get there quickly or easily. Like, this is what it gets to after years, not after days or months. Okay, so we've got that. I think we're good. Step 1, do we build? Now, step 2, this is where it gets interesting. Because now the question is, how do we test this? Because this is kind of hard to test. Yeah, one of the great things with C#, all the new NuGets. Yeah, just love that. Yeah, that is I think one of the strong points of C# is we have a really good package management. Like, some places have package management, and they're difficult to use. And I just feel like the NuGet flow is easy. It's really nice. It conceptually makes sense. And you know, we have them like C++, not like the package management story is not nearly as mature as C#. Or something like NPM, they have so many, it's almost overwhelming at times. It's like, so like, and there's plenty of garbage things out there, and NuGet is managed by a very small team of people. Like, there's only a handful of people that run NuGet.org. Like, it's small. And it's like, they're the backbone of how so much stuff actually gets done. Okay, I think what we can do is we're going to commit this. See, okay, good. Both my other PRs merged on the API, so that'll be good. This is the SDK. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know why my thing flags the word NuGet. I don't know. It must be a bad word in some language. Yeah. Yeah, it is absolutely awesome. And they've done a lot better job at trying to highlight which ones are good versus not. So like, you know, how often it's been updated, what the recent version is, what the cadence is, the links back to the source repository when available. Like, it is really nice. And I will say this too, as you get further along in your development career, building your own NuGets is actually not that hard. It's really not. I should come up with a good idea for a brand new NuGet, and we should like build a NuGet live on stream at some point. I think that could be helpful for people to see. I'm adding that to my list. I keep a running list of streaming ideas. Build package. Yeah, I just like, I have a little to-do app list with just a list of all of my streaming ideas. Cool. Good luck at work, society, dog. Don't have too much fun. Okay, so let's see. Updated to use the new release group APIs. Event sub Twitch stuff. Oh, is that Pikachu? Is that on the Twitch API? Because I have done a little bit of stuff with the Twitch API. Yeah. So I have. Yes. Yes. This might be a fun project to build at some point. Like, so I've done enough stuff with the Twitch API to be very, very dangerous. But I like this sort of situation with like webhooks, WebSockets, and conduits. Like, this is something that I would argue most new people don't necessarily understand. I've started working on my Twitch app for my capsule machine. Oh, cool. What's it do? Do you mind? Mind sharing the idea? Because like these types of situations with like webhooks they're not terribly difficult to do, but like there's a lot of, I don't want to say boilerplate, but it's like setup code to get this kind of stuff working. Right? Like the Velopack stuff that I was showing, it has a bunch of webhook stuff around doing Stripe integration for billing and whatnot. Gotcha machine for figurines to display on stream. Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. That's kind of cool. Are you doing it as an open source project? Yeah, this could be a listen for events that happen on Twitch. Twitch sends you a notification. Yeah. Guarding against replay attacks. The message ID field before. Yeah, so this is fairly standard for webhook type stuff. And this is actually not terribly difficult to do. Like, there's a lot of stuff that is hard until you see it done once. Yeah, if you want to, Pikachu, I'd love to take a look. Like, this is one of those areas where I've contemplated like building stuff out at times, because like a lot of the Twitch stuff is not hard. Like, and I see a lot of streamers, they jump through ridiculous hoops and bring in third-party stuff for doing all kinds of things. It's like, that's not that terribly difficult. JC, good morning. Welcome. We're doing a little Velopack stuff. We just updated the SDK, and I think we're about to try to run some end-to-end tests, because I'm crazy enough to try it. Yeah, 20 minutes with my mentor reading to try to figure out when the auth actually comes into play. Ah, yeah. So there are... I'm assuming you probably figured it out, but you're going to end up creating an OAuth application, which the word application, the fact that OAuth used that term is really dumb. An actor might be a better word of doing it. But in order to subscribe to the webhooks, you basically have to set up an account, for lack of better words, and tell it, hey, this is an okay endpoint for you to invoke. And then your endpoint has to accept the following structure. And I think, if I remember right, let me look, because there was a library I was using. This one. There was a library I was using, but I don't remember if it provided extra stuff for hooks or not. Let's see. Video converter, this guy. No, was that it? Yeah, this was it, because it's pulling in the Twitch client ID and secret. Oh, that's right. I was cheating, because I was using a library to hit Twitch, and then I cheated. Then I cheated a little bit and decided, oh no, I'm still using the Twitch API. Yeah, I just wrapped it in my own HTTP client and sent it in. Because the whole thing here was I was just looking to download videos. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact setup here, but yes. Create event subscription endpoint. The endpoint must look like this. Effectively, like in C#, you're making an endpoint where the payload is structured like, yeah, something like that. And then and so your question on auth stuff is here, right? Bringing in the user access token, because in this case it's server to server communication. Like, you have an app, but at the end of the day, you're going to need to receive a webhook. You have to give Twitch a URL that they're going to invoke, which means it can't be running. I should say can't. It shouldn't be running on your local system. So you have some cloud deployed thing over here that has an endpoint that you tell Twitch about and say, hey, call this endpoint when On async start, yeah, but it's telling Twitch, hey, call this endpoint when this event occurs, right? And so setting that up is the subscription to the webhook, and then it's just going to invoke that endpoint for you and say, hey, here is a call when this event occurs. And then requirements for each event type. Yeah, and then setting it up, you have to gen an access token with the right scopes. I think this is done inside of the account. Let me look. I gotta do this on a second screen because I vaguely remember doing something like this at some point, but this is also one of those areas where I don't really want to show things on stream until I find the right page. But there is a page for managing like the developer stuff. I don't remember where the thingy is. Yeah. This is because this is the wrong area. Because I think the webhooks approach is probably the easiest. Testing your event handler, use the CLI. Well, that's cool. I didn't realize they had built a CLI that does a reverse proxy. That's cool. That's cool. Follow the Twitch channel. Yeah, but where this is. Ah. But where did you get the bearer token in the first place? Oh, this is probably what you meant by struggling to find the off. Yeah, delete, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so this is nice, but there is the info, creating clips, games, JPI concepts. Non-breaking changes, rate limiting, pagination, blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. What we want is, there we go. This is what you want. This is what you want here. Register an app. Get an OAuth token. There is your access token. So the key part here is this register an app. This is a thingy that you create on Twitch. This is what will give you your client ID and secret. Do not share secret. As the name implies, it should be secret. But that client ID and secret is what you use to authenticate. And that will give you this access token. This access token, where it has token type bearer, if we then go down to this one, create event hub subscription. When you are making the API call, that's where your access token goes. You have an authorization header that is bearer space access token, client ID header, and then the rest of it. So in order to set up the webhook, in order to set up the subscription that tells Twitch to call your webhook, you have to create an app to get a client ID and a secret. You have to use that client ID and secret to get an access token. You can then use that access token in an authorization header to be able to create an event subscription, and then you're off to the races. And then hopefully this callback URL, this is where this needs to be something publicly accessible that Twitch can invoke, right? So you're going to have to host something in Azure, AWS, or similar, that that it can invoke, and it's then going to pass a payload that we saw before. So something of that nature. But again, if you run into problems and it's something you want to share, happy to take a look. Okay, so a while back I made a repo that is all about end-to-end testing. We are going to open this sucker up, and then we are going, no, we're not going to open. We're going to go File, Open in VS Code. Yeah, understanding still isn't 100%. Huge help though. Thank you. Yeah, and I haven't necessarily, like, I've set it up before, and I'm going from distant memory. But again, it feels like one of those things where I've contemplated building something on stream to kind of like show how it works, because it's not terribly difficult. Like, it's not hard. Okay, so we have an Avalonia app, and then Velopack Avalonia. And I think, yeah, this guy is set up to point at localhost, which this is key, right? Is I want to be able to run this whole test local and see it work. So let's see, it does the VPK login. So the key thing here is I need the tool built, which means I need to build and publish VPK locally and or merge the code. I think there's a script already in the repo to build this guy locally. I think. Kalen tends to leave scripts around where I can find them. README NuGet. Oh, that's just the README for NuGet. Let's see here. Yeah, if you leave a nice testimonial on Discord, it might end up in the README as well. Okay, so that is there. Okay, let's just look at the... Where's the GitHub build? Yeah. So what is the build? Yeah, so we've got the Rust stuff, blah, blah, blah. Cargo stuff, don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. .NET test. Test cross-platform. Package. This is what we're looking for. .NET build. Continuous integration build. Blah, blah, blah. Package artifacts. Is it as simple as that? Might be as simple as that. It might be that simple. Yeah. Terminal. Just run that command real quick. This might do all of the building. I can't remember. I remembered it was easy. See, successfully created package. File not found. Oh, so we probably have to do the Rust building first. Which is, where's that cargo command? That's across. Let's go up to the top. I think this is oftentimes something that people overlook when they're like, how do I compile this? Like, oftentimes people have a build pipeline. Just go look at the build pipeline. Let's see here. Runs on install cargo. Should already have that. Test. But where is the build Rust? Oh, build Rust on Windows. Yeah, that thing. I think I'm gonna just run this because I think there's been updates since I last installed everything. So we're just gonna install the stuff real quick. Because I had all this going, but I can't remember how old it's been, and I think there's been updates. Okay, so there's that. Next command, and then the last one, build Rust. That should get us pretty close. The other thing to keep in mind is some of these things have working directories, so you'll note this one has working degrees src Rust, so I gotta cd real quick. Cd src Rust. Paste, enter. And that's all the harder it is to convert these things into locally run commands. Because when people get all excited when they talk about doing pipelines and DevOps and all this stuff, DevOps is just doing the same stuff you do on your dev machine on a different machine. That's that. Like a huge amount of DevOps is literally just taking what's on the developer's machine and making it happen somewhere else. Sorry to all you DevOps engineers. I don't mean to downplay what you do. But that's kind of what it is. It's like I just want to script all of this stuff. Come on, Rust. Go quickly, please. I'm only so patient. Because I just want a package built. Yeah, because this thing then just uploads stuff. Cancel workflow if failed. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. I've never seen that done before. Okay, now we're gonna go back down here. Come on. Whatever this last step is, it's taking forever. 194 out of 196. Go! You did 194 steps. Do the last one. The last two, please. Let's see. There's one. There we go. Okay. Now, if I remember right, I have the .NET build. Oh, hang on. I gotta change directory up a little bit. Then we can paste that. Let's see. File not found. Velopack source Rust. Source Rust. Target. Wait. Source Rust. Target release. Update Nix. x64. Oh, so I'm missing a Rust build step that is going to give me this 64-bit stuff. That is the problem. So I have missed some sort of 64-bit building thingy up in the Rust land. Okay. Oh. When I did the Rust compile, this is a magical Rust flag. So where are the Rust flags used? This thing. I did matrix Rust flags and I didn't properly bring that value in. Okay, so give me my CD. And then give me my Rust. Oh, this is test Rust binaries. Rust tool chain. Where is the x64 stuff? Oh, it's because I haven't built the Linux binaries. That is what is biting me. Okay. We'll do that. And that will probably get me the update Nix x64 stuff. Aside from that, doesn't work. Dang it. This now makes my life harder. How do I get this thing built? You can merge the PR and then let the next CI release produce it. Because that's the problem, is in order for this thing to be tested, I need the VPK CLI working. Do I? I do. I do. Let's do that. Let's just send the PR. Dating to use the new flow APIs. Great pull request. And then we are just going to let that guy roll, and then we'll let it merge. And then we'll just do it there, because it's midnight, and I probably should be awake for tomorrow anyway. So we can do that. We'll let that guy go, and then hopefully this thing merges, and then we'll get it tested and get it rolling. So, cool. I think we'll call it there for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging out. As always, it was fun. Again, I'm in the process of moving houses, so I reserve the right to randomly cancel streams at a moment's notice, depending on what is going on and if I even have internet access at the new place when I finally move. So keep an eye on the Discord. Keep an eye on Twitter. That's where I will typically post updates if my schedule changes. If everything goes well, the AI stuff that I had threatened to do a couple weeks ago, Casey and I finally got our act together, and the plan is for the 24th, which is next week. So with any luck, so depending on where you are, 1 week from today. So we will see about building the Kevin bot, or the Kevin Chat GPT clone that can hopefully answer all of your development questions with remarkable accuracy and is mildly obsessed with Mountain Dew. We're going to call that a success if we can pull it off. But with that, I'll tell everybody happy coding. See y'all next time.